Hey there, Angela Mosley here. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through an anterior pelvic tilt, looking out for the signs, the symptoms, and checking on yourself. And then we'll walk through my 3-step method. Release tension, breathe into the spot, and then activate the opposing muscles. So let's go ahead and get started with identifying symptoms and identifying if you might have an anterior pelvic tilt. For starters, I am not giving you a diagnosis by any means. I'm just giving you the tools for you to work at home to identify if maybe you are sitting in more of an anterior pelvic tilt. Okay, so the very first step is to just pay attention to your body and maybe even take a picture or take a video of your movement patterns. When we look at ourselves, when we look at our movement patterns, this can tell us whether one side is slanted to the side, or maybe we have more of like that anterior pelvic tilt positioning. So I struggled with an anterior pelvic tilt for a very long time, and I had chronic low back pain, I had back spasm, I still had leaking, and all the things, diastasis recti. So an anterior pelvic tilt could be one of the reasons why your diastasis recti isn't healing, especially those lower abdominals, why you feel low back pain, why you might be feeling a pinching sensation, and why you might be leaking. So that's why it's important to address an anterior pelvic tilt. But when we have an anterior pelvic tilt, it's not just with the pelvis. It's actually going up the entire chain. It's going up into our rib cage. It's going down into our knees and down into the feet. Now, I'm not going to get into all the nitty gritty in today's video, but I'm going to share with you a couple different things that you can do to kind of see what's going on with your body and then pay attention to it in movement and things like that. Okay. So for starters, you're just going to want to take a position or take a photo of yourself from the side. So if you notice here, I'm dumping forward into my low abdomen and I've got this excessive arch in my back, right? So this is putting a lot of pressure, especially if you have a lower diastasis recti, if you have had a C-section, if you're experiencing leaking, or maybe if you have a cystocele prolapse, which is a bladder prolapse, which is what I have. And so you want to think, instead of dumping forward, because what this does is it creates this open scissor position, right? So I'm dumping in my low back and then my ribs are thrusting forward. And so that's why it's more than just a pelvis positioning problem. It's because you're probably compressing in the rib cage. So you've got not only compression back here, but compression in the rib cage. So that when the ribs open, then the pelvis tends to dump forward. And so that's why in today's video, we're going to talk about down regulating some muscles, especially those lats, because those lats can basically pull up on the pelvis and make it shift forward. Okay. So there's a lot of things that we want to look at. You can also have the quads that are pulling on the pelvis downward and pulling it down. That's shifting it forward as well. So that's why we have to address it in a whole body way, because if you don't address, say, the lats, or if you have a flared rib cage to the front because you have compression in your thoracic spine, then just looking at the pelvis isn't actually going to fix it, right? Because it's going to go back to, if you still have those tight lats and shoving the rib cage up and forward, it's still going to pull on the back of your pelvis, which is going to pull you more into an anterior pelvic tilt. So very important that we address the entire body and not just the pelvis, all right? So if you have hip pinching, say in lunges, if you experience pinching, in squats, if you experience pinching, that could be a sign, but that's not the end all be all, right? So the other things you want to look at, take a picture from the side. Does your pelvis dump forward? Do your hip bones pretend like they're flashlights, right? So if I'm standing forward here, they're going to go straight out. Whereas if I'm dumped forward, they're going to go slightly down, okay? So if you do have low back pain, and this is why building more of that awareness, but also taking a picture of yourself or a video of yourself, you can start to identify where you might have some compensations in your body. So again, hip pinching, whether in knee drives, squats, lunges, you've got that lower belly pooch that just won't go away despite all of the core work. You're still leaking quite a bit. And then if you have a rib cage that's shoved forward, so you can see if your ribs are shoved forward, because it's the lats that are going to pull on the pelvis and pull and shove this forward. And then you have that open scissor position. All right, so go ahead, join me down on the mat. We're going to do a quick test you could do at home. Again, not a diagnosis, but this can give us a general idea of what could be going on with with the pelvis of with the position of your pelvis. Okay, so we should be able to get in and out of an anterior pelvic tilt and a posterior pelvic tilt, right? Our pelvis should be able to move into one and then out of one. The problem is when we get stuck in one position over the other and we can't move ourselves out of it. An anterior pelvic tilt isn't inherently bad in and of itself, but it's when we can't get out of it or when it's causing problems like that hip pinching, lower belly pooching, and that low back pain that we might be experiencing. So you can notice when you go to lay down onto the mat, which I'm going to show you in just a sec, if you have this excessive lumbar curve as the pelvis is shifted forward, so these bones here on your pelvis are shifted up and then your pubic bone is shifted down and you have an excessive gap between your back and the mat. So you're going to take either just a quick picture of yourself lying down so you can see if you can see that back. So here's what I mean. So I'm going to come down onto the mat and I'm going to just drive my legs out, okay? So number one is, do you have an excessive arch in your low back? So if you can get your hands all the way through, so here's that excessive arch. If you can get that, really does not feel good, by the way. If you can get your hand all the way through, then you generally could be sitting in an anterior pelvic tilt. Okay, another thing you want to think about is taking your hands, so the palm of your hands, placing them on your hip bones, and then your fingertips on your pubic bone. And can you feel if your fingertips, your palms are higher than your pubic bone, so higher, they're shifted up, or are they lower, or are they basically neutral, okay? So paying attention to that is the number one. So again, that gap in that low back is gonna be that number one thing that you can tell when you're laying down, but then taking your hands to see, okay, is my pelvis above my pubic bone or is it pretty neutral? All right. So identifying that, it's always good to have somebody else to put their hands on you too. You can also have one side that is anteriorly rotated over another because we have compensations in our body, right? And somebody like me who has scoliosis, I was squatting one day and I could see that my left side was dipping over and my right side was above, and it was because my QL muscle was pulling on this left hip here. It was pulling on this hip, pulling it up, but I wasn't necessarily in an anterior pelvic tilt. So having someone assess you hands-on, like a massage therapist, a really, really solid, good massage therapist who you can work with, can help you identify tightness as well. Okay, so we've identified if you have, you've looked at the symptoms of pinching, lower back pain, lower belly pooching, and then you've done that quick test on the mat. Again, take a picture of yourself and then place your hands there to see if you really are sitting more into an anterior pelvic tilt. Okay. Then right after that, we want to down regulate the muscles. Now, I don't know what's going to be tight on you. What's going to be tight on you is going to be is going to be different for somebody else. But a lot of the muscles that pull us into that anterior pelvic tilt are our lats. So our back, it pulls up on the pelvis in the back, which shifts it forward. You can also have that QL muscle, which is really, really hard to get to. So I'm not going to explain that today, but if you have a massage therapist, talk with them about getting into that muscle. But some of our breathing exercises that we're going to do today will help with that as well. So our lats, our TFL, or our QL, and then in the front of the body, you've got your quads that are typically pulling down and under. So you want to down regulate those muscles. And then also the TFL, which is kind of like it sits in the pocket as if you're going to put your hands in your pocket. That can pull the pelvis shifted forward as well. So we're going to work on the posterior chain and then work on the front of the chain. And then we're going to go into some breathing. So what I like to do is I like to grab my handy dandy foam roller. And always with foam rolling, you want to do it right before you're breathing because we want to lengthen, release any tightness in the body, and then we want to follow it up with some breathing. Because think about a crushed up water bottle. I got this from my mentor of mine, and you can't get the dents out unless you go inside of the water bottle. So we're releasing the muscles with the foam roller externally, and then we're going to follow it up with the breathing internally, and then we're going to follow it up with activation of the opposing muscles like our lower abdominals. We need our lower abs to help pull the pelvis up, so shift up. So when we're more into a posterior pelvic tilt, this is going to get those low abs to turn on a little bit more, and I'm going to show you a trick with one of my favorite exercises. And then we need to get those hamstrings to show up because the hamstrings will help pull you out of that anterior pelvic tilt and help pull open the back and pull on the pelvis to shift it up, right? To get us out of that anterior pelvic tilt. So we're going to work on those hamstrings and those lower abs, okay? So first, foam roller. If you feel any excessive pain or massive discomfort, that is a sign that your body is telling you something. Please stop. Do not continue on, okay? Foam rolling can be really sensitive for some people. So talk with your massage therapist, talk with your doctor. But by all means, if you're experiencing pain, please do not continue, all right? So first, I just like to come onto the side, and you can create as much pressure or as little pressure as you would like. And so I like to kind of just roll around to see if I have any sticky spots. So coming up and around, you can also use a ball on the wall. I've got a really short foam roller, which is not ideal. Okay. So just rolling up and down on this side and kind of, play around with your hand placement and just play around with what might feel super sticky on you. And then you'll want to do the same thing on the other side. So again, you can just hold that arm out, play around with it, move around. If you have a tight spot, so yeah, my foam roller is too short, so I almost fell over. If you have a tight spot, you can sit here and breathe into that spot. All right, so once you feel like, maybe 40 to 60 seconds on each side, then we want to address the front of the body for tightness. So like I said, that quad, so our quads pull us into that anterior pelvic tilt, and then our TFL. So I'm going to start with our quad. So I'm going to start at the top of my knee. We don't want to roll on the knee because that is not, that would be very painful. All right, we always want to just make sure we foam roll on muscle, not knees. So I'm just going to drive forward and then drive back. So same thing, you can roll to the side, in, and if you find a sticky spot, you can simply hold and breathe into it, okay? Then after that, I like to go into, so same thing, anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds, however much time you have. I'm literally going to go into my pocket here. So I'm pretending like I'm putting my hands in my pocket. Be very careful with this one, and this is where I really do want you to pay attention. So I'm going to show you on this side. So I'm literally just going to come into my pocket. It's not very deep. I'm just going to drop down and roll up. Okay, so again, same thing. I'm going to go for about 30 to 60 seconds, again, however much time you have. Again, our goal is just to downregulate the muscles here and downregulate any muscles that are pulling us into that anterior pelvic tilt. So if you feel like you have more quad dominance, or if you feel like you have more lat dominance and your back is pulling up on it, then you'll want to switch to that, okay? Right after that, we're going to go into our breathing. So I'm going to grab myself a pillow and a yoga block. Okay, so there's two breathing exercises that I really like for an anterior pelvic tilt. There's a lot of them, but these are the two most basic ones. And when I say breathing, we want to think about that 360 breathing. So we're inhaling through the nose, expanding 3 directions, right? But we're going to but block off our abdomen so that all of the breath is going to go into the back. A lot of the times, like I said, if we have that rib cage that's shoved forward, we're going to have a lot of compression in that back. We want to make sure that we can pull it back. So we're going to try to breathe into the posterior rib cage and then also breathing into that low back. So option number 1 is a child's pose. Super easy. I'm going to use that pillow. There's a lot of different things that we can do here. But I want to stick with the basics just to get you started because I don't want to overwhelm you. All right. So then I'm going to use the yoga block for head support. Okay. You can also use a pillow underneath your bum here too, if that feels a little bit better. But the idea is that we're just crushing the abdomen so that all of the breath has to go into the back. So I'm going to use my yoga block for head support. And you can reach your arms out long a little bit. I like to squeeze the yoga block in between my elbows, or in between my forearms. And I want to think about breathing into these spots and into my back here. So as I inhale, I want to think about when I inhale into that, or I blow into the water bottle, I'm getting all those dents out. And that's what I want you to think is happening with your body. So any tight spots that you have in your body, I want you to think about breathing into those spaces. So inhale through your nose, and exhale gently out through the mouth, okay? So this is position number 1. So this is a really good starting position to get the breath into more of that posterior rib cage spot, especially if you have compression up there. That's shoving your rib cage forward, which is creating that open scissor position. All right, anywhere from 5 to 10 breaths, 2 to 3 times. The more you do it, the more success you're going to have. All right. After that, we have a deep squat hold. So I really like this one because, again, it's going to compress the abdomen, but then our focus is going to be that low back area. So you can always take your hand and place it on your back to see, can you get your breath here? Because a lot of the times this is a very compressed spot. Especially with someone with an anterior pelvic tilt. And so that tightness is going to keep you from pulling the pelvis back. So same idea with the child's pose is that you're just going to breathe in through the nose. And we want to think that nice expansion. So if you can think about 30 to 50% of your breath going down here, you can also think about your breath going down into your pelvic floor. Okay, so inhale through the nose. And exhale nice and gently out through the mouth. So we're not compressing anything. We're not doing a forceful exhale. We're just doing it nice and gently. And like I said, you can always take that hand, place it on your back to see if you can feel the expansion in that low back area. Sometimes we just need that touch, that sensation of skin to skin or hand on body to really feel like, oh, I am actually activating. Okay. So once we've done that, then we want to go into activation. So again, hamstrings and our lower abdominals are going to help pull us back under and to help pull the pelvis without clenching, because while glutes are a significant role in an anterior pelvic tilt, we also really need those hamstrings to literally pull the pelvis back under. And so one of the exercises I love doing, and my mentors have always taught me to do, is a hamstring bridge. And so what I'm going to show you today is a super simple hamstring bridge hold. Now, a foam roller is going to be harder because it's going to be a little bit wobbly. So if you have a low bench that you can use, but essentially we just want to make sure that we're doing a longer lever bridge, meaning that our feet are away from our bum, because the closer our feet are to our bum, the more glutes we're going to get, whereas the further away, we're going to get more hamstrings. Now, another thing I want you to think about is I want you to think about your hamstrings showing up at the bottom of your pelvis. Many people will feel the hamstrings in the back of the knee, and that's not a bad thing, but we really need the hamstrings in the back of the pelvis to pull that pelvis under and out of an anterior pelvic tilt. So this is where you get to play around, right? You can even use a bench or a chair where you can place your feet up on a chair and just press your feet or your heels into the chair to activate those hamstrings, okay? So it's going to be like a lower level option. So if you want to give that a try first, please do so, all right? So you're going to think your goal is just an isometric hold with your breathing. So your breathing, you want to think rib cage expansion and down into the back. So as you drive your legs up or your hamstrings up, you want to think that it's pulling from the bottom, okay? So if you're feeling more of the back of the knee, then reposition yourself or change your elevation. You can also do this just on the mat, okay? And just focus on the mat, so you don't be afraid to feel with your hands. Now we're gonna sit here and breathe. So I also want you to think about reaching your arms up, but I'm not like coming up, right? I'm just reaching up towards the ceiling. I'm thinking about reaching through my pinkies to drive up. And I wanna think about inhaling into my back and sides and down into my back, okay? So you're gonna hold that as long as you can. So try for 20 seconds, then go for 30 and continue to build upon that and do that about 2 to 3 times. So again, if you're on that foam roller, it's going to be a lot harder because of the instability of the foam roller, okay? So you can also use, like I said, you can have your feet up on a bench or a chair and just dig those heels in to help pull on that pelvis, because we want the hamstring engagement coming from the bottom of the pelvis. You are going to feel it at the back of the knee, but we want to put more focus on the back of the pelvis or the bottom of the pelvis. So just pay attention to that. Okay, and then our other exercise that I absolutely love for getting those low abs on boiler. I'm going to show you 2 of them because a dead bug, I'm sure you've heard of it, is a great exercise, But with somebody who has an anterior pelvic tilt, they might experience some hip popping, and it might take some time for you to get used to it. So I'm going to walk you through that first, and then I'm going to show you another exercise that you can do that can help you with those lower abs and prepare you for your dead bug. All right. So first, let's just get ourselves set up. So you want to position yourself more into a posterior pelvic tilt as best that you can, because when we're in more of a posterior tilt, that's going to get more of those low abs. So you want to think about your hip bones coming towards one another, and you do want to have a slight core brace. Notice that I'm talking through this, but I can feel that I'm compressing my abdominals, but I'm not bearing down on my pelvic floor. So number one is just keeping those hips still with your core and driving one knee up at a time. Notice if you experience any hip pinching in this or hip popping. So once you feel like you've mastered that, then you can come up and you can add in one heel drop at a time. So notice what your low back is doing. Is it coming up off the ground? Are you experiencing hip popping here? Once you feel like you have that mastered, then you can add in those arms. So left leg, right arm, right leg, right arm. You want to make sure that those hips are not shifting, that your core is engaged. When our hips shift, that's where we get that hip popping. And once you feel ready for it, then you can drive one leg out at a time. This is where many people will get that hip shifting, hip popping, low back pain. So again, is your low back popping up off the ground? Are you shifting in those hips? Do you experience hip popping? Are you experiencing hip pinching? Pay attention to that. So one thing that you can do is if there's one side particularly that is doing the popping or the hip shifting, you can place that rolled up towel underneath that hip. By bringing this mat closer to the floor, it gives you something to connect with, to not let it come down. And that could be enough in itself to help you create that connection with your core and your hips to keep your hips from popping. So you can also place it underneath both if you're like, you know what, I just need to help position. So again, play around with it. This can help position you more into that posterior pelvic tilt by lifting the hips up a little bit. Can help you get into that posterior pelvic tilt to work more of those lower abdominals. So if you're like, Angela, dead bugs just don't work for me, that's okay. We can address those lower abs. I love this super isometric hold exercise. You can use a pillow, you can use a ball to press into the knee. It is so simple. You want to think inhale into the back and sides. And then as you exhale, you're going to press your hands into the knee as your knee comes towards you. So you're using resistance from your knee and resistance from your hand with your exhale. Inhale, back and sides expand. Exhale, you're going to think about zipping from the bottom up with that exhale from the mouth. This is going to address those lower abdominals as you exhale. And so that's going to help, especially for someone who is more an anterior pelvic tilt. By lifting this leg up, it's naturally going to help pull you into more of a posterior pelvic tilt, which is what we want. And that's where we need those abs to show up. All right, so give that a try. Remember, not a diagnosis. Step one, find out what's tight on your body. Is it your lats? Is it your QL? Is it your TFL? Is it your quads? What's pulling you into that anterior pelvic tilt? Number two, do your release work, whether it's child's pose or a deep squat. Deep squat is probably one of the ones that I did more often than not because of my anterior pelvic tilt. Use support where you need it. You can do both. You can do one set child's pose, one set of your deep squat, 2 to 3 times, as many times as you can do it throughout the entire day. Do a set in the morning, a set in the midday, and a set at night. Breathing is going to be a game changer for you. Then follow it up with activation. So activating that hamstring in that isometric hold, and then follow it up with some lower abdominal work, such as our dead bugs or that hand and knee press. Okay. If you're looking for a more in-depth approach, if you're looking for more of like a straightforward plan, this is what I want you to do every single day to help you with leaking, prolapse, diastasis recti, anterior pelvic tilt. Make sure to check out the All Access membership where you can get access to my 12-week signature program specifically for moms who are leaking and want to get back to lifting with prolapse and diastasis recti in the caption below. And I will see you in the next video.